I'm not in any way frightened of dying. That doesn't worry. It's never worried me from the beginning. But I would be annoyed. I'd be annoyed because there are things I still want to do.
New Zealand, within an hour, we got the phone call from his doctor. I hear him say, well, do I need to start the treatment? Do I need to come back to Sydney?
My news, and I'm glad I voiced them. What I wasn't prepared for was the personal abuse I would come in for.
On Monday, July 13th, 2026, the world lost Sam Neill, the man who faced down velociraptors as Dr. Alan Grant in Jurassic Park, the quietly menacing Chester Campbell in Peaky Blinders. A 5-decade career that took a kid from Northern Ireland to some of the biggest stages in film. He was 78 years old, and his family said the loss was sudden and unexpected, coming just months after Neill had proudly announced he was finally cancer-free. His representative later confirmed the actual cause of death: pneumonia. But this video isn't really about the dinosaurs, or the submarines, or the 50 years of film credits. It's about something Sam Neill rarely talked about publicly. A son he didn't meet for 25 years, and what happened when they finally found each other. Neill's family released their statement the day he died, posted to his Instagram using a word that says a lot about who he was. They called it a message from his FNAU, the Maori word for extended family, for community, for the people who show up for you. It is with immense sadness that the FNAU of Sam Neill share the news of his passing, the statement read. They said he was surrounded by family at the end, and that he passed with the dignity that has characterized his whole life. They thanked the staff at St. Vincent's Private Hospital in Sydney, and asked, simply, for privacy. That word now wasn't just poetic. Neill's family was genuinely unconventional, something he described himself years before his death in his own words. Back in 2014, Neill sat down for a rare, deeply personal interview with the Sunday Times. He described his family as more extended than most, and at the center of that description was a story most fans had never heard. Decades earlier, in his early 20s, Neill had a son. The boy was placed up for adoption. Neill was young. He was, in his own words, quite small too, barely more than a kid himself, trying to process what it meant to be a father before he'd figured out much of anything else about his own life. For 25 years, Neill and his son didn't know each other at all. No visits, no letters, no contact. Just two lives running in completely separate directions. An ocean and a lifetime apart. And then, in his own words, something shifted. I didn't see him for 25 years, Neill said, and then we went looking for each other. That's the detail that matters here. It wasn't a chance encounter. It wasn't a DNA test that stumbled onto a stranger. Both of them made the decision to search. Both of them wanted to find out who was on the other side of 25 years of silence. What happened next wasn't the kind of reunion you see dramatized in movies, and Neill was almost blunt about that in the interview. He pointed out that most reunion stories get portrayed as sentimental and grisly, full of tears and dramatic embraces. His and Andrew's, he said, had nothing sentimental about it. No one sobs in anyone's arms, he explained. It's much more grown up. Think about what that actually means. Two adults, one of them already a famous actor by that point, sitting down and rebuilding a relationship not through emotional collapse, but through conversation, through patience, through treating each other like the grown men they'd both become, rather than trying to force 25 lost years into a single tearful afternoon. It's a strikingly mature way to describe reconnecting with your own child, and it tells you something about how Neill approached hard things in general, calmly, honestly, without performing for an audience even when he technically had one. Andrew wasn't Neill's only child, and understanding the rest of the family helps explain why Neill used that word, FNAU, instead of something more ordinary. In 1983, Neill welcomed a second son, Tim, with actress Lisa Harrow. The two had met on the set of Omen III: The Final Conflict back in 1981. Later, Neill married Noriko Watanabe, a Japanese makeup artist, in 1989. Together they had a daughter, Elena, and in a detail that says a lot about the kind of father he chose to be, Neill also adopted Noriko's daughter from a previous relationship, a girl named Maiko, raising her as his own. That marriage lasted until 2017. So by the time Neill passed, he left behind 4 children, spanning multiple relationships, multiple decades, and in Andrew's case, a quarter-century of separation followed by a reunion built entirely on both of them choosing, twice, to find each other. First, when Andrew was placed for adoption and everyone moved on with their separate lives, and second, decades later, when neither of them let that first decision be the end of the story. In that same 2014 interview, Neill was asked what advice he'd give his younger self, the same young man who, in his early 20s, had faced that impossible decision about Andrew. His answer was simple. You're more capable than you think. Looking back at everything that followed, the marriages, the children he raised, the son he lost touch with and then spent real effort finding again, it's hard not to read that line as something closer to a lesson learned than a throwaway quote. Since his death, tributes have poured in from people who knew him far more publicly than Andrew ever did. Nicole Kidman, Toni Collette, Cillian Murphy, Laura Dern, all sharing memories of a man they clearly respected on and off set. But no public statement has been shared by Andrew himself, and out of respect for what remains, ultimately, a private family matter, this video won't speculate on one. What we do have, in Neill's own words from over a decade ago, is enough to understand the shape of that relationship. 2 people who lost 25 years. And then quietly, deliberately, without sentimentality, decided not to lose anymore. Sam Neill spent his career playing scientists, spies, and villains audiences couldn't look away from. But the role that may say the most about who he actually was never had a script at all. It was a father, in his 20s, making a decision he couldn't fully understand yet. And decades later, a grown man, choosing to go looking for what he'd missed. If this story moved you, let us know in the comments and subscribe for more honest looks at the lives behind the roles we grew up watching.